Welcome back to our channel, where every hidden truth, every unspoken betrayal, and every whispered secret finds its way into the light. Today we dive into the second episode of Beyond the Gates, airing September 29th. What unfolds is not simply a continuation, but a descent, a slow unraveling of fragile souls burdened by the weight of memory, guilt, and the shadows of choices they cannot escape. Step with us into a world where each heartbeat is heavy, where silence is sharper than a scream, and where every character teeters on the edge of ruin. Chelsea walked through the main gates with a heaviness that clung to her bones. Each step carried not just her body but the accumulated dread of a past that refused to stay buried. The air was thick, laced with the faint trace of iron and cut grass, but it was the unseen presence trailing behind her that chilled her most. The sight of a familiar face in the distance froze her breath. A gaze locked on her, sharp and unyielding, painted with suspicion and quiet menace. The simple weight of that look split her composure, reviving memories she had sworn were sealed away. Her fingers curled against her palms, nails biting into skin until crescents of red surfaced. Pain became her anchor, a futile attempt to convince herself she was still in control. Beside her, Joey carried his own ghosts. His face appeared calm to the untrained eye, but the truth trembled just beneath the surface. Shadows of the past converged in the form of a figure that should have been long forgotten, yet now stood before him like an omen. His chest rose and fell with shallow urgency, betraying the unease he tried to cloak beneath false composure. Eyes darted briefly, unable to settle, as if searching for a corner of the world where guilt could not follow. But guilt, relentless and patient, clung like a second skin. Every breath was a reminder that the sins he once thought hidden were now clawing their way back, demanding recognition, demanding justice. Elsewhere, Tomas sat in isolation. His posture was rigid, back pressed against the cold stone, eyes fixed on nothing. Inside his mind, a storm brewed, composed of words spat in anger, of accusations that carved deeper than knives, of failures replayed in merciless loops. Each recollection was another chain, dragging him lower into the abyss of self-doubt. He could hear echoes of disbelief from those who once mattered most, voices telling him he would never be enough, that his existence was nothing more than a hollow promise. His fingers dug into his knees, nails scratching, desperate for sensation, desperate to tether himself to the present before the tide of memory drowned him completely. And then Eva appeared. Her presence broke through the haze, not with grandeur but with quiet persistence. She moved toward him with the patience of someone who knew how fragile he was, how easily he could shatter under the wrong touch. Her nearness brought warmth, a fragile thread of calm weaving through the chaos. A hand brushed against his shoulder, steady, tender, allowing him the space to collapse without judgment. For a fleeting moment, Tomas surrendered to the safety she offered. His muscles loosened, the weight on his chest lifted slightly, though he knew deep down it would not last. The storm was not gone, it was merely paused, and when it returned, it would rage stronger. Across the estate, Vanessa was unraveling. Nights without sleep had left her hollow-eyed, her veins carrying not blood but exhaustion and despair. Every corner of her home whispered Doug's name. His shadow was etched into every chair, every doorway, every lingering silence that pressed down like a suffocating hand. Grief mutated into obsession, an insatiable hunger for truth. She could no longer breathe beneath the weight of unanswered questions. Doug was gone, yet his absence screamed louder than his presence ever had. Her path led her to Jacob. When she faced him, her gaze was steel sharpened to a deadly edge. She did not speak, she did not need to. Her eyes demanded what words could not. Jacob stood like a fortress, but inside, cracks ran deep. He shifted under the intensity of her stare, his breath uneven, his hands twitching in betrayal of the calm facade he wished to maintain. Secrets throbbed in his chest like a second heartbeat, heavy, poisonous, waiting to spill. The silence between them became unbearable, a rope drawn taut, threatening to snap. Jacob knew that if the truth slipped, it would ignite a fire that could not be contained. The evening sun dipped low, shadows stretching long across the manicured grounds. The estate, so carefully maintained, now resembled a graveyard of hidden sins. Chelsea and Joey moved like specters, bound by past misdeeds that refused release. Each step carried them closer to reckoning. Tomas, momentarily comforted yet forever fractured, lingered in a fragile calm that could collapse at any second. Vanessa, with eyes that burned through Jacob's walls, stood on the threshold of revelation. And Jacob himself, burdened by the weight of what he held back, felt the edges of his world crumbling. As darkness spread, the air thickened with inevitability. No one could escape what was coming. Chelsea feared being dragged again into the snares she once barely survived. Joey knew his past would not forgive him, that his sins would rise like corpses from shallow graves. Tomas clung to Eva's quiet strength, but beneath the surface, his despair waited to consume him. Vanessa's hunger for answers was a flame licking higher, threatening to engulf them all. Jacob, clutching secrets close, understood that time was no longer his ally. The garden fell into silence, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Trees stood still, birds vanished, and the air pressed down with suffocating weight. It was the silence before a storm, the silence that warns of destruction. Within that silence, the hearts of each character thundered with fear, regret, and fury. Cracks widened in the fragile facade they had built, preparing to split wide open. What lay ahead was not peace, but the eruption of everything they had tried to suppress. Their choices had carved a path that led only to fire, betrayal, and ruin. The gates that once promised safety now felt like bars of a prison, locking them in with their demons. And when the storm breaks, it will not discriminate, it will tear through each life, leaving nothing untouched. This is only the beginning of what waits beyond the gates. Stay with us, because every revelation is darker than the last, every choice more devastating than the one before. And as the shadows lengthen, the question is not who will fall, but who can possibly survive. Follow our channel and subscribe, so you never miss a moment of the chaos, the secrets, and the unraveling that will define Beyond the Gates.